We appreciate everyone making it out. I know it's a little off the beaten path for most, but important nonetheless that we all got together today. This afternoon, we are going to speak about that use of force video that's been making its way out there in some quarters. In just a couple of moments, I want to introduce Chief Putney. He's going to go over what the department's position is concerning that use of force and really get into a lot of the texture and substance concerning the whole incident. When he's through, we have Lieutenant Mitchell. I know a number of you have known him from the Police Training Academy here. He's a subject matter expert when it comes to all things use of force. He's going to go over our use of force continuum to give you an idea of what policy is, what expectations are. I really want to encourage everyone to, as much as you can, follow along really, really closely, because this is important stuff. It really goes beyond any quick soundbite or story. I mean, this is important stuff that the community really needs to know, understand. There's a lot of texture, a lot of dynamics involved in a use of force situation. So I'd encourage you really to pay attention to Lieutenant Mitchell when he goes over that use of force continuum. Just as a matter of housekeeping, there is some new ground that we're going to break that I can announce before I introduce the police chief in just a couple of moments. We, the department, are in the process currently of petitioning the Superior Court to go ahead and release that body-worn camera video to all media outlets, to the public essentially, so they have an opportunity to see it in its entirety without it piecemealed. And so everyone in the community can have the opportunity to weigh in and review it to see exactly what occurred out there. That's precedent setting. That's the first time that we've done this. That's after the new legislation was enacted back, I believe it was sometime in the fall. So some new ground to break there. With that, I'd like to introduce Chief Kurt Putney.
Thank you, Ron. Afternoon. Very briefly, what I want to do is give you our philosophical position on use of forces in general, and then kind of let our subject matter expert, Lieutenant Mitchell, walk you through the specifics, and then we want to open it up to questions, and I want to address any questions that you might have. What I can tell you to start with is there is no use of force that's going to play well. They just don't look good. Anytime an officer has to hit someone, the optics are unpleasant. What we try to do is hold ourselves to the highest possible standard. And what is missing in all of this is there's an example in the videos that shows one of our officers, in particular, Officer Insminger, who is the example, who is the model of showing our community what we always strive to achieve in the area of using force and using the appropriate level of force and having the appropriate level of restraint. What I'm not here to do is defend everything that was done, because I'm not going to defend the indefensible. I'm not going to defend some of the language, because we do have policies that restrict what can be said and in what manner. Nor am I going to defend all of the tactics used, especially on behalf of Officer Dunham. In this particular case, those two things couldn't be addressed because Officer Dunham is no longer employed with us when it was adjudicated. But I also want to tell you that that is the level that we strive for. There's a legal standard, and the lieutenant will walk you through the nuances of that and open up to questions. But we have a higher standard that we look to achieve, which is we use force that is reasonable, but we also pride ourselves in trying to be as restrained as we can when we apply force, even though legal. We want to apply the minimum level necessary, and then as soon as we can, we want to de-escalate. And I think Officer Insminger embodies that. So with no further ado, I'll bring up the lieutenant, and then we'll open it up to make sure we answer any questions that you may have. Thank you.
Good afternoon. So I guess from the very beginning, what we'll do is kind of talk about this in a training standpoint. And we basically have put behind here the continuum that we train the officers on. And they are drilled in this continuum and the specifics of that continuum and how they relate to reality repeatedly throughout their career. So in this particular situation, based on the video and the officer's statement, he articulated that he believed that the suspect, Mr. Yarborough, potentially had a weapon. in his waistband. And in that statement, he also references the fact that his training and experience indicates that that's where a lot of people carry weapons at when they are carrying weapons illegally. So, and that in fact is training that they receive. The data supplied by the FBI to back up that. And that's also experience that officers encounter when they work the streets and make arrests for CCW and things such as that. So I think there were some questions about the weapon positioning in relation to Mr. Yarborough's head. I can say that, as the chief talked about earlier, there are training issues. Had this officer stayed at CMPD, we would certainly be addressing those training issues. We do not encourage officers to place weapons in close proximity to suspects in any manner, whether it be their head or their chest, only for the reason that if they are going to be that close, there's a chance that the suspect could possibly grab the weapon, and then that would probably necessitate some type of elevated level of control to get that person under control. Chief also referenced language. We certainly discourage officers from using that. That serves no benefit. It does not rectify the situation any quicker than dealing with that in a professional way. So you see in the video, and you can see from the officer's statement, that once he is comfortable with the fact that Mr. Yarborough wasn't armed, he holsters his weapon. He went from what he perceived to be a lethal force encounter to a lower level of control. He referenced in his statement that he doesn't draw his weapon again, that he forcefully got his hand underneath Mr. Yarborough's waistband and patted him down, in essence, to make sure that he wasn't armed. And then once he realized he wasn't armed, he handled that situation with a much lower level of control than lethal force. So that's it, really. Any questions?
Yeah, Lieutenant Nick Ox from WBTV.
Yes,
You
sir.
talked about Officer Dunham's use of non-lethal force, which he writes about in the statement. It's clear on the video. But Officer Dunham's clear in his statement that he punched Mr. Yarborough a total of 6 times to the head and then elbowed him in the head. Is that appropriate to be using force like that when you're simply trying to put a suspect's hands behind their back?
Yes, sir.
To punch him to the face?
Well, yes, sir. If that's what he ends up, if you look here, that would be a hard empty hand strike. I believe, I need to reread the statement, but I believe that the officer attempted to use his taser first, and that was ineffective. And then he holstered his taser, so you could see that a conductive energy weapon is actually higher on the continuum than punches or strikes.
So I'm saying in terms of position on the body, are officers taught to punch you? If I'm trying to get my hands behind your back, should it be punching to the side, to the mandibular area, or to someone's face, as Officer Dunham says he did in the
So we would encourage officers. We can't dictate every situation as they unfold, but we encourage officers not to do that. A lot of times it's because the officers end up injuring their hands, but that it's not the most effective way to strike someone and get compliance. So I believe, and again I need to make sure I'm up to speed on that, but the taser was used first, and that was actually a higher level of control, was ineffective. You can see on the video that they're delivering shots or strikes to Mr. Yarborough's back and ribs area, and I think they actually start striking the head when those don't work.
So it seems like what you're saying here is, A, he should not have put a gun to his head. B, he should not have said, I'm going to kill you. What discipline would an officer face doing that in a future situation like
Sir,
that?
I can't really comment on that. The discipline would come from his chain of command.
Should he have done that? Speak more specifically about putting the gun to the head and saying, I'm going to kill you.
No,
Should he have done that?
Well, no, sir, because of the reason we outlined, which would be that if you place your weapon in close proximity to a suspect, there's a good chance that he could reach up and grab that weapon. But we're talking about, is he justified in having his weapon out? I would say yes, sir, he is. But we don't encourage, we discourage those officers from placing their weapons in close proximity to a suspect. Because if the suspect, hold on one second, if the suspect were to grab the weapon, then certainly we're in a much worse situation than we were before.
Lieutenant, in the video that we saw, and this may be me, I didn't see the suspect reach towards his belt. Is there video that you saw that indicates
I can't speak to that, sir.
he did reach towards?
You need to talk to the the chief about that, sir.
Sure. In reviewing the video, you do see his hands close under him, and then when they pull it out, the hand is not visible. When they pull it out, that's when you see him holster up. But it's a pretty quick, I think it's about 4 seconds, that exchange, where he can't see where his hand was. And as he said, I don't know that if I can't see your hand and it is in front of you, our training experience is that's where the weapon would be. I don't know that that's exactly what he was reaching for, but I know in that incident, that hand was not visible.
Would it have been because there were so many officers sitting on top of Mr. Yarbrough that he really couldn't remove his hands to put them behind his back, what he was being told to?
At the end, yes, and that's why Officer Insminger tells him, hey, get off his back. You can't get his arms behind his back. Here we go. He sees by that time both hands, the left and the right, are empty. There are no weapons in it. And then that's when Officer Dunham, I believe, gets off of his back. They're able to finish the handcuffing.
What was your reaction when you saw him put the gun to his head and say, I'm going to kill you?
My reaction anytime I see a use of force, initially, I hold my breath like anybody else. I know it's not going to look pretty because this work doesn't look pretty. But what I also encourage you to do is think about the context. As Rob said, the reason I want to put out all the video is because I haven't heard a lot of questions about the 3-minute foot chase. I haven't heard about a lot of the 4-minute struggle. What I do hear about is the gun to the head, the language, and the punches to the face. Trust me, I get that. I'm concerned about any time we use force. But most importantly, what we're going to do as an organization is apply the law and try to achieve a higher standard than even the law allows. Officer Insminger did it, so did Officer Yandel, the other officer involved. Dunham, by putting the gun to the person's head and the language he used, not so much. But again, that's the standard to which we hold our people. Much higher than the legal standard, but ultimately when it comes to a use of force, the legal standard is the standard that takes priority.
Did Officer Dunham face any punishment at all?
We can't punish people who don't work for us.
Well, he worked for you at the time.
Yes, sir. And we were investigating it before he left. We didn't get to adjudicate it prior to that, his departure.
You were still investigating it at the time he left?
That's correct.
Was his departure at all related in any way to this?
I can't speak to that. I can't speak to why he left. All I know is he left before we completed our investigation and then adjudicated.
Do you know when he left exactly?
It was during the course of the investigation. I think it was in March, maybe, but it was during the course of the investigation. I don't know specifically.
March of 2016?
I can get you that information.
Okay.
Yes.
Was he encouraged in any way to resign, or was it totally his decision?
Not to my knowledge. It was totally to him to seek other opportunities. Yes.
Chief, you stood up here and said you cannot defend the actions of Officer Dunham, some of those actions.
I
in that
cannot
video.
defend language. I cannot defend putting a gun to somebody's head in that situation.
Well,
Yes.
and yet Major Patterson, in our interview and our story on Monday, did defend that. So was Major Patterson wrong to defend that in our interview on Monday?
What I saw from Major Patterson is the use of force was legally justified. She was very clear in that. She was very clear in it. Review it. I already have. And I can tell you that nobody's defending putting a gun to somebody's head in that particular situation. I can also tell you that I can't guarantee there aren't situations where we use force that might be appropriate. If I'm on my back, I'm fighting for my life, and I'm that close to your head, maybe. That's not how we see this particular incident, though.
He was saying that the main reason not to do that is because the suspect could grab the weapon. Is that
one reason?
the only reason that
No.
you see to not put a gun to
No,
a guy's
sir.
head?
The lieutenant said that's the main reason. I agree. Also, it can knock your weapon out of battery. If you're pushing that weapon too far and now the weapon can't fire, it's useless to you. And, the other thing is, if a lower level of force were justified, he wouldn't be drawing his weapon in the first place. So the lieutenant is exactly right. It's easy to take a weapon that you put in close proximity to the head or the body itself, and knocking the weapon out of battery renders the weapon useless. So there are a number of reasons why not.
Should he have drawn a weapon at all in that situation?
If an officer reasonably believes that the person is armed, they can draw their weapon. So yes, that is justified.
Even when you're on top of them and have them under control, and there are 3 other guys standing there?
Well, you change the scenario.
I'm just saying what I saw in the video.
Well, what I tell you is a person's not under control until they're under control and cuffed. He was not. If your hands are still moving and you're struggling and you're grabbing roots and tree trunks to keep your hands from being controlled, that is not controlling our business. The other thing people talk about, though, is the multiple officers involved. I wish the ratio could be 2 to 1. In 1993, we lost 2 officers, John Burnett and Andy Nobles. The ratio to officer to suspect was 2 to 1. 2007, Jeff Shelton, Sean Clark. The ratio of officer to suspect was 2 to 1. So we're going to use as many officers as we can to bring somebody under control. And once they're under control, just like in this case, and we get you handcuffed, we're not going to use force anymore. To do so is illegal. All right?
Given the environment in Charlotte right now after the Keith Scott shooting, are you concerned about how this episode, it happening in the middle of the fact that a lot of the community is on edge about police-community relations right now? Are you concerned about what this does to police-community relations?
What I'm going to tell you is I'm getting used to being on edge. I think that's a new reality. So I told you, I'm concerned every time we use force because I want to make sure that we're trying to reach that higher standard. And some of our officers, even in this case, did. But yes, am I always concerned? Absolutely. Is it going to look bad? Absolutely. Do I struggle with it? Yes, I do. I struggle that we have to chase people who we believe may be armed, and then we have to use force that that has to be escalated so that we can control them. All those things concern me. Yes, sir.
Does this episode now cause you as a department to maybe rethink training or other things that may go into preventing something like this?
We're always assessing, always. We've already spelled out the training issues we see to this particular situation. There are lessons to be learned from that. The training is ongoing. I wish I could tell you that we're going to stop training one day. That's never going to occur. We're also going to keep learning. We're a learning institution. So yes, we're going to keep learning. Yes, we learn from everything that happens. And are we going to adjust training just because of this specific incident? Well, had it been according to training, we wouldn't be having this conversation.
I'm going to take one or two more now.
Yes, sir, please.
One thing that we included in our story but hasn't been the focus of anything is Mr. Yarborough originally called us because your department never followed up with him and allowed him to file a complaint. And we know that your department did not provide him a written finding from the Internal Affairs investigation so he can appeal those findings to the Citizens Review Board, which is policy.
Yes.
Can you address why that wasn't done?
Yes, this complaint did come in. We did investigate it, which is why we're talking about it right now. In the letter, it was just adjudicated, so we're going to deliver that letter to him, hopefully by the end of this week. So he will be able to appeal to the the Citizens Review Board. So that letter has not been delivered yet, but it will be.
It was just adjudicated this week?
No. I'm sorry, the letter should be delivered by the end of the week because now the case has been adjudicated.
I'm just unclear. Can you clarify when this was adjudicated? It happened last March. When was the case adjudicated?
I will give you that date. I do not have that date right now. Yes, we'll get you that date.
Chief, if I can ask just a quick question
Sure.
on, this is unrelated, but in your memory, in the protests that followed the Keith Scott shooting and the Randall Carrick trial, do you know of any instances where someone was unable to get to a hospital or in an ambulance or otherwise because of protesters in the street?
Other than being able to render aid to Justin Carr, no. That's the only time I remember that somebody was severely injured, and because of the crowd, we couldn't get to him to try to save a life. That's the only time I can remember, sir.
Well, and to follow up, do you know if any protesters were ever hit by a vehicle as they were in the street?
I do not. No.
And we'll do that research for you and
All
get you that information. I'm going to let him get
Appreciate
back. And just for house, thanks, Chief. Just for housekeeping, I know some of you may have questions concerning the process about this petition to the Superior Court. That is underway as we speak. Again, this is a new animal for us. I understand that we may be considered an expedited party in that regard, so we hope that in the short order that we'll be able to facilitate that and get that video out to each and every one of these outlets that are in this room today. So stay tuned on that. Again, it's a new animal for us, and we're literally in the midst of going through the process now. We appreciate it.